Nine yeas, 1 no.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I will initiate a recess for 10 minutes. It's 7:05. We will return at 7:15. And with that, we are in recess.
嘅7:15再開過。
Okay. We back. Mr. Leger, are you there?
Getting myself organized.
Okay, great. When you're ready, I think it would be a good idea if we call the roll, make sure we still have a quorum.
Okay. Want to wait a few minutes, or would you like me to call it now?
No, call it now.
Okay.
Call for the recess to be over on 7:15.
Member Frazier is absent. Member Padmanabhan?
Present.
Member Padmanabhan present. Member Neighbors?
Present.
Member Neighbors present. Member Stein?
Present.
Member Stein present. Member Forsley?
Present.
Member Forsley present. Member Schmidt?
Present.
Member Schmidt present. Member Wong?
Present.
Member Wong present. Member Yankee?
Present.
Member Yankee present. Member LaHood?
Present.
Member LaHood present. Member Highland? Member Highland?
He's muted. But go to the next person.
Chair Wolf?
Present.
Chair Wolf present.
Okay, we'll note that Member Highland is absent, and when he arrives, we hope that he will announce himself. If not, he'll remain absent. Okay. Just need to close my door. All right, come inside. Okay, let's call the next item.
Item number 6, file number 20068, complaint filed by James Chafee against the Library Commission for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6714 by failing to make audio recordings available on the website, 6721 by failing to respond to a records request in a timely and complete manner, and 6729 by failing to maintain the Library Commission website. Matter was heard on March 16, 2021. The complaint committee found jurisdiction, that the records are public, and referred the matter to the task force for hearing.
Okay, before we begin, I'd just like to note that in Mr. Chafee's submission of the complaint of February 4th, which is on page 71 of our of the document, and page 5 of the PDF. It states that the violation is against the San Francisco Library Commission, the president of the Library Commission, Dr. Mary Wardell Giarduzzi, and secretary to the Library Commission, Sue Blackman, I'm sorry. So just so we're all clear as to who the respondents are. Okay. So this is a regular hearing. Again, we'll start with 5 minutes of introductory testimony, and we'll move on from there. Mr. Chafee, are you present? Star 6 would unmute you. Mr. Chafee, are you present? Ms. Leger, did you receive any communication from Mr. Chafee?
Not about today's hearing, no. The only communication I received was the letter that I sent to you.
Which made no mention of,
Correct. But I haven't
If it
heard.
matters, I've been asked to say something on behalf of Mr. Chafee's reason.
I'm sorry, who's that speaking?
This is Peter Warfield.
Do you have any communications from him regarding his presence?
I spoke with him about it, and he had also sent me a short email. Basically, he said that he asserted in a previous email that he didn't believe there was a requirement legally for anybody to attend and that there was no need to attend. And since he had not gotten a response, he felt that there was basic agreement with that and not something contradicting it, so he didn't need to come. And of course, he had said he didn't want to.
Okay, I received that same, thank you, Mr. Warfield, appreciate that. I received that same communication, but it didn't, it wasn't clear to me that it was specifically related to this particular case. It seemed to be a general statement. Maybe I missed something in the communication, but I'm just want to check our complaint procedure. Our complaint procedure makes a requirement of that. Being that the ordinance allows us to have a hearing, we've been operating in this way with this requirement for a very, very long time. Recognizing that Mr. Chafee's history with the Sunshine Task Force, being a member and a chair since the beginning of its inception. You know, I'm not necessarily recognizing how this is.
This is Member Stein. Can I just ask, where does it say that in our bylaws or wherever, where does it say that a complainant has to be there?
It's in our complaint procedure, number 7. Section C, paragraph 7. Attendance and requirements for complainant and respondent. A, subparagraph A. Unless otherwise provided in these procedures, the complainant and respondent are required to attend the hearings regarding complaints. However, at the discretion of the task force or its committees, accommodations may be made in response to special circumstances or requests made to the complainant and or the respondent. And then B, if the complainant fails to appear at a SOTF or committee hearing regarding their complaint without prior communications, the matter may be filed and dismissed without prejudice. What it means to be filed, it may be closed. Can everybody on the phone please mute themselves? Please press star 6. Specifically, the phone number ending in 6151. Thank you. Okay, if the well, we had complaints dismissed without prejudice are considered closed and no further actions are to be taken. The complainant shall be notified of the action and may request their complaint be reopened in writing if requested within 60 days. The complainant may also refile the complaint on a future date, period. The task force or its chairperson shall determine if the complaint shall be reopened. How shall we proceed, members? What is your pleasure? And this was, the letter was addressed to myself and to members. I'm not clear if it was sent out to everyone.
Chair Wolf,
Yeah.
this is Member LaHood. I don't know if you can see because it looks like we don't have the tile view anymore, but Member Forsley has a hand raised.
Oh, okay. Member Forsley, go ahead.
Hi. I was wondering if there's a possibility that the complainant didn't know that they were, supposed to appear, and now that we're saying that they have to appear, if we could potentially just let them know that the case would be fine as long as they know they have to appear next time. Or is that not, if that's not the procedure, I would just prefer to do whatever the procedure is.
Well, normally I would agree with you for, but in this case, with regards to Mr. Chafee, he is so knowledgeable about the task force because of his participation on it, involvement, and probably when this complaint procedure was created, either at the time or soon after.
And he's gotten in writing that he has to appear.
He got it. Oh yeah, he had. That's why he sent a letter. Oh wait a second. This is not the letter that I was referring to. He said in his letter he was challenging our ability to require the complainant to appear. Let me see if.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the ordinance itself requires that the complainant appear, only the respondent, only the government agency, but it's in our bylaws that the complainant is being asked to appear. I think it's a problematic bylaw personally, but it is in there.
Well, we have been back and forth on this. We've had changes to, it's not a bylaw. It's part of the complaint process.
Okay, sorry. Got those documents together.
Yeah, so
Procedure.
we have, because there were mostly city staff or respondents that complained about having to come to 2 meetings, we've gone back and forth as to which meetings that are they required to attend. And we made those changes more at the behest of the respondents. So if they didn't want, we basically have it now where they're not required, I think they're not required to attend a committee. Oh no, they're required to attend both. It used to be they weren't required to attend the committee meeting and then not the actual hearing, and we've done it the reverse also. And the problems that we were having is if they didn't attend the committee and we weren't able to get all the full information, then we'd spent way too much time at the task force doing discovery at the task force hearing. Vice versa, not getting enough information at the committee meeting, if they don't show up at the full hearing, then we get all this, then we get not enough information to be able to have a fair hearing. So, yes, Member Forsley. You're on mute.
So I guess my question is, do the place where it's written that they have to appear, does that particular statement, whatever it's called, override the Sunshine Task Force ordinance itself?
Well, the ordinance it's in 6721. Let's see, it's 6721E. It says, if a custodian refuses to fail to comply or incompletely complies with the request described in subparagraph B above, or if a petition is denied or not acted on by a supervisor of public records, the person making the request may petition the Sunshine Task Force for determination of the records. Task Force shall inform the petitioner as soon as possible within 2 days after its next meeting, but no later case than 45 days from when the petition in writing is received of its determination whether the record is requested or any part of the record requested is public. And then skipping down,
It basically says in the last sentence or two only that the custodian of public records should, from basically the respondent should attend the hearing. It doesn't specify that the petitioner has to attend the hearing.
Well, true. I mean, at the last sentence of this section says, or two sentences says, where requested by the petition, Sunshine Task Force may conduct a public hearing concerning the records request denial, and an authorized representative of the custodian of public records shall requested shall attend any hearing and explain the basis for its decision to withhold the records request. Our rule, but be it as it may, our rules are, we've created rules around how to conduct the hearing, and it includes having the person who makes the complaint attend. I mean, I don't know that any other administrative process would do that. I mean, we provide the ability to make anonymous complaints, but I don't think a court or any other, even the Ethics Commission requires, it allows for one or the other parties not to attend. But I think in this case, we have in it the option for the complainant to have the case reopened.
This is Member Forsley again.
Yes.
I guess just goes back to that same question. Do our bylaws, governing documents, etc., whatever we're calling it, override like the law? So it would be like if the person wanted to like potentially just refer to the ordinance and say, I don't have to show up, do our particular bylaws or documents override that? And
No,
or
it
are you
doesn't.
saying that we can decide?
Our governing, these documents, our bylaws and our complaint procedure do not supersede the Sunshine Ordinance. But that means that the question is if a person is going to challenge the interpretation of the Sunshine Ordinance and we don't agree with that, then what? I mean, just because somebody says that they think it's to be interpreted some other way doesn't mean that it's correct.
That's true, but I think the discussion that you and Member Stein were having is that it doesn't like specifically say they have to be here, just the respondent has to be here. So I guess we probably should be on like, I guess, one accord regarding if the respondent just has to be here or not.
I mean, I just want to say I understand why it's in the bylaws and I understand your explanation, Chair Wolf, of why the task force has found it important to have both parties there for getting full information and for, hopefully not wasting time. But I also feel like it could be seen as a barrier to complainants because it's a high bar that we're asking of people that want to appeal a decision, just in terms of the amount of time they have to spend, writing up a complaint and then coming to, at least one committee meeting and then coming to a multi-hour task force meeting. So I mean, I'm kind of the mind, like in an ideal world, you might say to them something like, look, we recommend that you come. You have a better chance of succeeding if you come, but not necessarily requiring it. But I understand that it's there in our bylaws. So I mean, I can go along with that, but I do see it as a bit of a barrier to the complainant. And I feel like it's much more important to have the city there to be held accountable because that's sort of the whole aim of the Sunshine Ordinance.
Okay, and we've got a couple other hands, but just again, a correction, it's not in our bylaws, it's part of the
I'm
complaint.
sorry, in our
procedure.
procedures, yeah, in our
Okay.
complaint procedures.
You know, I would just additionally say that I don't think any hearing that happens would actually hear the complaint without the person making the complaint. The other problem we have is if people do this at their peril if they don't want to show up. And our complaint procedure provides the ability to have it reopened if they feel that it was incorrectly managed. And we have a reconsideration process at the same time. But if for some reason, if we move ahead to hear this file in this hearing, and it doesn't go, it doesn't, it doesn't support the complainant's findings, then if they find that we're wrong because they weren't here to explain it, then they can file for reconsideration. And that is an additional waste of our time. And I think that that's inappropriate. If people are going to go to the trouble to make a complaint, they should, like we are having as volunteers to be here and to hear those complaints. And we have an agenda that gets sent out, and their notices of appearances go out before the agenda is posted to make sure that they know that their hearing is coming up. We bend over backwards for this. So I think it's, I think it's incumbent upon people to appear. If respondents don't want to appear because they want maybe to declare no contest or something like that, that's a different story. But we are here for the public, and we give the public, this wonderful opportunity that doesn't exist in most cities. So I'll stop there. I've got Member Schmidt and then Vice Chair Yankee, and then a Member Neighbors.
Yeah, Member Schmidt, I'm going to sort of put in my 2 cents on this, which is when Member Stein spoke up, I was pretty much right there. One is it's a rule, but there's no sanction. There's no unless the rule says that we have to act a certain way if they don't show up, then it's a rule that we can say, oh, he didn't show up and he violated the rule. But that doesn't necessarily mean to me that we therefore either dismiss a claim or don't hear it, etc. It seems to me that the claimant has had his opportunity. He's chosen, whether he's protesting or not, he's chosen to not be here. But if he's got a valid claim, let's hear it. And I think that the idea that people can put in a claim because they feel like they've been denied records, they've been denied access. He's put in a claim, and he wants an answer. That's my sort of chiming in on this.
Okay, Vice Chair Yankee.
Yeah, I was just looking at the complaint procedures, and I think I was on the Rules Committee when we last kind of talked about this, and I think both sides that have already kind of been tossed around were discussed. I mean, we discussed, what happens if someone wants to lodge 10, 15, 20 complaints and they never show up for them. That's a lot of work, like you spoke about, Chair Wolf, on this task force for someone who may not necessarily be invested in time besides sending, a variety of emails and so forth and so on. But we also recognize that, this can obviously take a lot of people's time, and going to multiple meetings can be difficult. And so we looked at 7D, talking about just having them, and it says after an initial in-person appearance, the complainant may authorize the SOTF to proceed with the hearing in absentia on the complaint without a complainant's presence at the hearing. And so I think was kind of the the middle ground, if I recall, that we discussed at the time, having them be invested to a certain extent, but then realizing that, these things often can be continued on from meeting to meeting and so forth and so on. And it gives that person the opportunity to say, go ahead without me, but at least, has them be part of the process as well, at least at the initial stage. And so I guess my question, since I wasn't on the committee that initially heard this, was, did the complainant appear at the committee stage to discuss this?
No.
I don't. Okay.
Okay, Member Neighbors and Member Highland.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to point out that the complaint procedure itself is in the bylaws. And so in that sense, it does appear there with the presumption that the complainant is there in the steps that are followed through that. And there is no alternative procedure. So while that procedure is codified, no other procedure without a petitioner is codified in that way. So I think that's an important consideration. And then the teacher in me has to say that, I think there's an assumption here about where burden lies for different folks. And in my years in watching this task force, one of the things that I've noticed is that some of our petitioners have real strength in putting their written packets together and their arguments. Some of our anonymous petitioners specifically basically have written out packets for us that allow us kind of a roadmap of their complaint, whereas other folks really thrive in the verbal part of it, but it's more of a burden for them to put the written packet together. So I don't want to assume that that we're putting an undue burden on folks to show up at the meeting. I think we're putting an undue burden on them to put together a packet as well, or we're putting a burden there, but we're actually giving them a choice of where they can put their strengths and put their and being here and being able to answer those questions and fill that information out has been really important for some folks as well.
Hey, Member Highland.
Yeah, going back several years when we, I guess, codified this, if you like, I think we were leaning heavily towards the the plaintiffs. In fact, there was some early language about requiring the respondents to show up, but not necessarily the plaintiffs. I do remember going through those permutations, but I think Vice Chair Yankee gave a nice balancing, saying at the time when we did this, we did have a lot of multiple filers, so to speak, if you like, and we're trying to balance the burdens of the task force, and that was at the time what we came up to be the fairest. However, I do remember, and we have done this in the past before any of your times on the task force, if petitioners ask us to essentially run with it, we can, and we have done that. So I think that's guidance to us, but I think we have, as Chair Wolf said, we have the power in us to go ahead and hear this, whether the plaintiff is here or not. And I think in his letter, his language saying it stands alone, I'm happy to take that as, run with it, execute this file. That's how I see it. Thank you.
Just before we have two more speakers, I just want to respond to two things. One is in our bylaws, it's the hearing procedure that is in the bylaws, not the complaint procedure. And also to Member Highland's point, we've always gone ahead in absentia when a respondent isn't. That's in my experience. It's been very rare that we've taken a case, in my experience, and I'm missing 4 years here since 2005, that we've taken any case where a complainant was in absentia unless they requested it or allowed it after they had already appeared at a complaint committee. It was never where they were in complete absentia. At that point, we would consider it they have no interest. in carrying their complaint forward. And that's why the complaint, in the complaint procedure, it gives so many, like at least 3 opportunities to be able to have the case reopened in that way. So at least show up for the initial meeting. And if they feel that this is an open and shut case after the initial committee hearing, then fine. You know, but at least show up to 1. Okay, next we have Member Stein and then Member Forsley.
Yeah, I just want to say, because I went back to look at Mr. Chafee's letter, and while it's true that he doesn't specifically request not to attend these meetings, this is what he says. You know, he's referring to a letter that he was sent from the task force. He said, this letter indicates that, quote, your attendance is required, unquote. There is no justification for such a requirement. My complaint speaks for itself. The purpose of a complaint is to bring a violation to the attention of the task force. I am not a prosecutor of sunshine violations. I am not seeking damages. The aggrieved party is the general public, of whom you are presumed to be the representatives. The only effect of such a requirement is to create a barrier to enforcement. So I think while he doesn't specifically request not to come to the committees, he certainly makes it known that he feels that his case stands for itself in writing, and that he doesn't feel that he needs to be present for that case to be heard.
Member Forsley?
I was just gonna say again, just going back to just like which thing overtakes which other thing. Like if our complaint procedure can overtake, you know, the actual ordinance, then we should go with that. If it's more, or the other way around, we should just go with whatever the rules are. But if we have more flexibility than that, I would think that we would want people to be here. In like if they made the complaint, they would want to be here. And I think that just what Member Stein just read regarding that his duty is to bring information to the task force attention, I don't necessarily believe that's what, you know, a complaint is supposed to do, because there's other, you know, governmental, you know, regulatory agencies that kind of handle situations like that. But I feel like we should definitely have the person who made the complaint here. I mean, that's it.
Okay, Member Schmidt?
Yes, just as to Member Forsley, let me say that to me, it's pretty clear that if there's any contradiction between the ordinance and the complaint procedures, the ordinance wins. The complaint procedures are you know, you could say there's 5 or 6 tiers of law here, starting with the US Constitution, California Constitution, state law,
Charter.
Charter, ordinance, and then anything that's a regulation or a rule of some kind is definitely inferior to anything in the ordinance. Although you'd have to find, I think, whether there is actually a contradiction. I don't know if we've necessarily identified one yet.
Okay, go ahead, Member Forsley, and then I'm gonna close it so we can figure out what to do. Go ahead. You're on mute.
You did, yeah.
You're on mute.
That's what I would assume, and I would assume the law would kind of overtake that. And I think that what some of the other members were saying is that actually in the ordinance, it does say, it doesn't specify they have to appear. So, I mean, we would probably just, you know, have to go with that, unless also in the ordinance it says that we could override that or just, you know, vote so their case gets closed so they don't keep doing it or something.
Member Padmanabhan.
So my point is that he has, Mr. Shafee has also discussed this with Mr. Warfield and has appointed him as a possible representative, or him, you know. So I feel that in that instance, we should go on.
Okay. All right, I will say this, that there is something to say when the law is silent on something. And when the law allows for a hearing to take place, that hearing procedures are usually with the body to determine how it's going to run that hearing. So if there are provisions that require at least a part of something, it doesn't mean that it overtakes the whole. And I think that is the way the complaint procedure was created around that point. I will also say that we're talking about interpretation of the law. So if we're going to interpret the law, then I think we should take a position as to what that interpretation is. And it should not necessarily be on a case-by-case basis, because we want it, if we're going to take a position as a set of precedent, then we should take a voted position on it, so that way everyone can enjoy that or get benefit or not from it. So I'm not willing to just say, well, if it's do we know if this overrides the law or not? It's a question. Okay. So at this point, our complaint procedure basically doesn't allow, if somebody hasn't shown up at least once for the hearing to proceed. That's the way our complaint procedure is, and that's the way the task force has voted on this complaint procedure. It wasn't just created ad hoc. It was, gone through our rules committee. It came to the task force. Task force had voted on it. There's been lots of public comment and the ability for the public many, many times to address this. So I'm not inclined to create a new precedent. But if you want to vote, I would ask that we put it to a vote of whether we want to, and then go on the record as, at least to say that we're either going to waive the complaint procedure for this particular case and do that on a case-by-case basis so it can be heard, or we follow the complaint procedure. Okay. I have Member Forsley and then Member Schmidt.
Member Schmidt, I think, had his hand up before mine.
Okay, Member Schmidt.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that, and put it out there, that we proceed and we hear the case on the merits and make a decision. If that requires the waiver of the rule, then we also would then say we're waiving the rule.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
my motion.
So moved by Member Schmidt. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Member Stein. Okay, Member Forsley.
I'm not exactly sure what the motion was. Can you repeat the motion? And then I might have a follow-up question.
You want me to read
Yeah,
it?
I'm sorry. You go ahead. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Moved by Member Schmidt, second by Member Stein. The motion is that we proceed with the matter and hear the case on the merits and make a decision. And if that requires a waiver of the rule, then move to waive. Is that correct, Dean?
Yes, it is, Cheryl. Thank you.
Okay, so my follow-up is I wanted to ask Chair Wolf, were you suggesting that we initially, I guess, work out a blanket rule to kind of waive this complaint procedure, or do it on a case-by-case basis?
No, I'm asking, based upon what you've been saying and what others have been questioning with regards to what does the ordinance mean, and also based upon Mr. Chafee's assertion. And the question is Mr. Chafee's asserting that it doesn't say in the ordinance that the complainant has to appear. it says that the respondent has to appear. That's what he's saying. The questions that are coming before us in this discussion is, does the complaint procedure override the ordinance? Well, the answer is no, it doesn't. Okay, but then the question is, what does the ordinance say? Is it about attendance to a meeting? The ordinance allows the, my assertion is the ordinance allows the task force to have a hearing. And for every other body that is here in the city and maybe elsewhere, if they're allowed, if they're given the authority to have a hearing, they also have the authority to determine how they run the meeting and what the procedure is for running the meeting, including whatever the law says is applicable or required. So that's what I'm saying. I will add this, that I'm going to vote no on this only because you're waiving the whole complaint procedure and not the specific section of the complaint procedure. And second, I think that the motion should be to waive just Mr. Chafee's attendance for this particular file, and that all the rest of the other parts of the of attendance still apply. Okay, giving him the benefit of the rest of the complaint procedure, because we're supposed to work with, under the interests of the public. Okay, we got a number of hands here.
Excellent point, and I'll amend, just as you asked.
All right.
So that would be that it would be to waive section C, paragraph 7, 7D, requiring an appearance for Mr. Chafee for file number
20068.
20068.
Yes.
Does the second accept that friendly amendment? Member Stein?
Yes. Yes.
I didn't hear that. Who's second?
Member Stein?
Okay, so
She did say yes. I heard her.
Okay.
yeah, I know. I know. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding how this motion is going to read. It's not going to read as you dictated it originally, Dean. This is now going to be your amendment to move to amend the motion to waive section C, paragraph 7D, requiring an appearance for Mr. Chafee for file number 20068. Is that how the motion's going to read?
Yes, with,
Bruce says no.
No.
well, I don't know if I'm moving to amend. Is that what I'm doing?
No.
I'm-
If you're looking to amend your own motion, you're taking whatever I'm saying as a friendly amendment. If you don't want to take it as a friendly amendment, I'll make a motion to amend it.
Friendly amendment, that's it, yeah. And yet with the provision that we proceed with the hearing. Still, the same provision.
Okay, Cheryl, do you want me to repeat it?
All right. Because I want to type it in.
Okay, so the motion is to, the full motion would be to, that the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force proceed with hearing complaint file number 20068, and with Mr. Chafee, the complainant, in absentia, and waiving the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force complaint procedure, section C, paragraph 7, subparagraph D, for requiring an initial in-person appearance. Okay, let's get back to folks who want to speak on this. I have Vice Chair Yankee, you haven't spoken yet. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess there was the one question brought up about whether the ordinance requires it or not. I think since the ordinance is silent on whether or not the complainant needs to appear, that basically allows us to promulgate the complaint procedure rules. Obviously, the rules have to include the fact the respondent shows up, since that's in the ordinance. But because it's silent on the fact of whether or not the complainant needs to, I think that does give us the leeway to make the rules one way or another. I'm kind of uncomfortable with waiving this suddenly on an ad hoc basis because, as Chair Wolf pointed out, this was an agendized item. When we discussed complaint procedures, we had a hearing on it. Members of the public were able to comment. Those complaint procedures have been posted on our website for years now. And I think there's a lot of other people who've really, had to put a great deal of effort to make our meetings, and probably wasn't convenient for them, but they did. And so I feel it's a little unfair at this point to suddenly alleviate that requirement from an individual. If we want to go back and have a robust discussion, about whether we should have that in our complaint procedures, I think I'm open to that. But I'm not sure that on this random ad hoc basis is the appropriate time for one individual. I'm not hearing something like he was in the hospital or he had some extenuating circumstance that wouldn't allow him to come, just that he prefers not to come. And I understand that, but I'm sure, there's a lot of other people who wouldn't rather come to at least the first one, but they did. So I'm just not comfortable, waiving the complaint procedures in this instance. I'll leave it there.
Okay, Member Forsley, and sorry, Member Schmidt, do you have your hand up?
No, let Member Forsley.
Member Forsley and then Member Highland.
Oh, I was just going to say that Vice Chair Yankee said exactly what I was just going to say. Just in all fairness, we should definitely not be doing ad hoc waivers of a complaint procedure. If we wanted to put it on the agenda to notice the public that we were going to be discussing this and taking a stance on this, it could be calendared for the next meeting or the meeting after that. But I think that for the purpose of this particular thing, if he wants to come back and say, well, the law says I didn't have to be here, that could be an excuse for him. But I think that if he's been noticed, that we should just, go with procedure and then take up the broader discussion in the near future.
Okay, Member Highland.
I'm trying to think of a more elegant way out of this, and I'm rereading 7A. Where A comes before D, where it says, at the discretion of the SOTF or its committees, et cetera, accommodations may be made in response to special circumstances or requests made by the complainant. I think right there, this could fall under that, and then you don't have to go and waive anything else. You could make the motion to say that based on 7A, we're exercising our discretion and proceeding with this. Simple as that. It could be read that way also. So I'll just throw that into the mix.
Member Stein.
Yeah, I mean, I do think in his letter, he basically makes the request that, he doesn't think he needs to be here. I mean, it's not a request, but he says he doesn't believe that he needs to be here. And, even though just to your other point about other agencies holding hearings and they require complainants be there, I feel like we're slightly different because of the way the Sunshine Ordinance is written. It's written in this way that we're always giving the benefit to the members of the public and trying to protect the public's right to access information. And I feel like that the fact that it doesn't require specifically the public to be there, to me, is like, I connect it to this issue of creating barriers to people being able to carry through complaints.
Well, I'm in disagreement with that because that's a matter of the interpretation of the law. And unless you have some definitive court opinion or case law that describes otherwise, this has been our precedent. So if Mr. Chafee feels in his letter to us in challenging our procedure in that way, that's a completely different discussion. This is our procedure, what we have here now. And if we're going to say, that's why I asked for a motion, if we're going to waive the procedure, because that is our procedure. It's official. We've been using it for well over a decade. Maybe
Yeah,
a decade.
I would like to revisit that procedure.
Right. Well,
I feel much more comfortable saying we strongly, recommend people come. But anyway, I understand that it's our procedure, so, and people should vote accordingly. Wherever they stand on that.
This is Member Highland. I still think that under 7A we don't have to waive anything. We reserve the right, and usually this is to the call of the chair, but in this case, it's the discretion of the task force as a body or its committees to make that action. That's how I'm reading this. And if we agree on that, then there's nothing that's waived.
Yeah, I disagree with that interpretation too, because it speaks for an accommodation. He's not asking for an accommodation. He's just saying that the way he interprets the law means he doesn't have to show up. That's not accommodation and not a request for an accommodation.
It says accommodations.
Accommodations may be made in response to special circumstances or requests made by the complainant.
Right there, or requests made by the complainant. Read that as a standalone.
Accommodations.
Or requests made by the complainant. You can read it both ways, Bruce.
Accommodations. I don't know.
I
read accommodations as being some alternative way to have for them to attend a meeting, or if they're under, something beyond a special circumstance. Anyway, I disagree. And okay. I would just say, if there's no other discussion, if we're ready for a vote.
Can we reread the motion?
Member Schmidt, you had your hand up. Did you have something else you want to say?
Just that there have been a couple comments that this is an issue that could be well handled if time were taken, and we were talking about an actual rule change, and I'm open to that, but my feeling is that we can have that as a possibility, but we can't do it right now. But in this case, we're doing a very minor, at least my motion, just as a very minor one-time deal based on the circumstances. And then if people want to talk about changing that rule, then we can do that anytime, and I'm open to that. But for purposes of getting through today's hearing, maybe this is just a provision just for today's hearing. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close that. Let's open it up for public comment.
Yes, please.
We restate the motion so we're clear what we're commenting on.
Leger?
Yes. Moved by Chair Wolf that the task force.
No, moved by Member Schmidt, second by Member Stein.
All right. Moved by Member Schmidt, second by Member Stein, that the task force proceed with hearing complaint number 20068 with Mr. Chafee, the petitioner, in absentia, in waiving the Sunshine Task Force complaint procedure, section C, paragraph 7D, for requiring an initial in-person appearance.
Okay. And you can handing public comment over to you.
Okay. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, please.
You ready, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, are you ready?
Yes, tell me when to start.
Go ahead.
This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. I want to say a few things about these procedures. I believe Member Stein stopped from the reading of the letter on page P73. But he said, I'm not seeking damages. The aggrieved party is the general public of whom you're presumed to be the representatives. The only effect of such a requirement is to create a barrier to enforcement. If the task force uses its position to create barriers to enforcement, then it would certainly be a waste of my time attempting to overcome that opposition. He goes on to say some things that I think everyone should read. The discussion here, I remember years of backwards and forwards and up and down and postponement, staying till 9 o'clock discussing procedures, and then they were put off until another time. This was an exhaustion. Right now it's already 8:15. If you were requiring somebody to be here for a hearing, they'd be here for 4 hours waiting. It is a huge, huge barrier to the public. They have to go to a scary thing at City Hall with 11 of you looking at them and a city attorney and all this stuff. There are many cases where it's just as plain as day. There is no need to have a complainant. If, for example, somebody says, you didn't, I made a request and it was due in 10 days, and the result has been that 30 days or 40 days or a year later was when the response came, that's pretty self-evident. And I think somebody suggested that there were times when people, yeah, they might have a better chance if they're present, but that might not be anything other than a barrier to access to a complaint with them. The law, I think, is extremely clear, and I think Member Stein pointed this out. The last sentence in section E, an authorized representative of the custodian of the public records requested shall attend any hearing and explain the basis for its decision to withhold the records requested. It says nothing about the any requirement that the member of the public has to attend. And it is an enormous, it can certainly be an enormous barrier. Mr. Chafee has been, I think, clear. Mr. Chafee was the first vice chair and the second chair of this task force way back when. He's a man of principle. And I think it's very clear the law supersedes anything. The law doesn't require presence. And if you had a procedure that had a typo and said you have to provide 2,700 copies when you only meant 2, you wouldn't be standing there saying, well, gee, our procedure says 2,700 copies have to be provided to us, so we have to stick with it. That would be absurd. And I think you need to follow the law. Thank you.
Do we have any more speakers?
Yes, anonymous, please.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. So on a principle basis and on what the purpose and intent of the Sunshine Ordinance is, I would very much agree with everything Mr. Warfield just said. And I think it's not just the last sentence of 67.21E, it's also the second to last sentence. Where requested by the petition, the Sunshine Task Force may conduct a public hearing concerning the record's request denial. But if the complainant isn't insisting in his complaint that he wants this hearing, then whatever you do shouldn't require him to be there. So I think it's not just the last sentence, it's also that second to last sentence. It apparently appears he's not requesting it. And so there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to investigate it without him. And I say that, and on that basis, I think that this motion is absolutely right. And unfortunately, I would also agree with the chair and vice chair, though, that, what would other people say? Like, maybe everyone's going to want this. I strongly believe you need to completely change your complaint procedure not to include this. My understanding is from before my time is that, like, for example, the city attorney's office sent you a letter saying this particular complainant, she was also all these other complainants. And because of this, you should change your procedure to be harsher against anonymous or pseudonymous complainants. I remember this only because I've read it through your own public records. And I think that's just an example of the city trying to have SOTF make it harder for people to enforce the Sunshine Ordinance against the city, when in fact it should be as easy as possible wherever possible. And on that basis, I think the one-time waiver makes sense, because practically, probably no other complaint's going to complain. They're going to ask you to change your rules, as I think you should. Thank you.
Do we have any more speakers? I think that's it, Chair Wolf.
Thank you. All right, public comment is closed. I have one last thing just to say on this, and that is, I'm not necessarily in agreement with the last two speakers, and for this reason, that when a body is given the authority to have a hearing, and it is silent about how that hearing should happen, then it's basically giving carte blanche to the body to be able to run the procedure or create a procedure and process however it sees fit. To me, what the law is saying is that however you do that, the respondent must show up. There's a requirement that you must include in your procedure, whatever it is, that the respondent must show up. If you want to not have a complainant show up, fine, you can do that. But it's based upon how you want to run the procedure itself. I think when the law is silent on that, it doesn't mean that it just means the opposite. And I think in this case, I think that it's speaking very clearly that the task force has the ability to do that. My concern is, if we do away with this particular requirement, we're going to end up with twice as much work and backlog, because people may feel, because we don't have their testimony, we just have their whatever they submit as a record, that many cases won't go their way. And we would have a very difficult time giving the public the benefit. And we'll end up with more reconsiderations, which is going to take even a longer amount of time beyond the backlogs that we have to deal with presently. So I'll stop there. If there's any other last comments, I'll take it. Otherwise, are we ready for a vote? Okay, let's call the roll.
Member Schmidt?
Aye.
Member Schmidt, aye. Member Stein?
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Member Frazier, absent. Member Padmanabhan?
Aye.
Member Padmanabhan, aye. Member Neighbors?
Nay.
Member Neighbors, no. Member Forsley?
Nay.
Member Forsley, no. Member Wong?
Nay.
Member Wong, no. Member Yankee?
Nay.
Member Yankee, no. Member LaHood?
Nay.
Member LaHood, no. Member Highland?
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Chair Wolf?
Nay.
Chair Wolf, motion fails. No, wait a second.
Yes.
Six
Four
nays.
ayes. Four
Six.
ayes, 6 nays.
Nays, yeah.
The motion fails. So, we will go with our complaint procedure C7B. And the matter will be filed and dismissed without prejudice. And Mr. Chafee has 60 days to request that it be reopened. And it must do it in writing. If it goes beyond the 60 days, still has the right under our procedures to refile the complaint at a future date. Okay, let's, and Ms. Lachey, we're going to have to send a communication to Mr. Chafee on that.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, great. Let's call next item.
Not yet. I just want to finish checking this one thing.
Chair Wolf, may I ask a question?
Who's speaking?
This is Member LaHood.
Yeah, if it's just like a point of information.
Yeah, point of information. Did someone, an administrator, change the settings on Teams here? Are you all seeing a grid or just the speaker?
I'm seeing I see 4 boxes.
Okay, then I think it's a Wi-Fi. It's a bandwidth issue. Never mind. Thank you.
Yes, but my
Mine keeps
screen
jumping
is
back and
also
forth.
flashing.
My screen's flashing too, and I can see a grid, but I can't see everyone who's on the call. Like I can't see all of our members even.
Yeah,
no,
I'm only seeing the speaker.
Mine's not changed at all. Everyone's there.
okay.
Bruce, you're on mute.
I'm not on mute.
Something happened. You were talking.
Me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready for the next case?
Well, we'll just.
Yeah, Bruce, I'm not hearing you.
Looks like he's frozen.
Yeah. No, he's not frozen. I just can't hear him.
Oh,
No. Didn't hear that. Didn't hear that. Are you guys hearing this? Lila, Dean, Laura?
I'm not.
he looks frozen to me.
He's starting to move. I think he's starting to thaw.
Okay,
Are-
it's back.
Did you
There he is.
lose
See?
your, did you lose your internet connection? Oh,
Yeah,
CW
he's coming.
leaving. What's that?
Coming back.
Oops, looks like he dropped off now.
He's probably going to log back in. Remember, Yankee, Vice Chair Yankee, do you want to take it
Sure,
from here?
yeah. I'll continue until he comes back in. So it's just, let's go ahead and have the next file number read, Cheryl.
Okay. Item number 7, file number 20033. Complaint filed by Anonymous against Mayor London Breed and the Office of the Mayor for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6721, 6729, by failing to keep or cause to be kept a compliant Prop G calendar.
All right, and is Anonymous present?
Anonymous is present.
Great. Okay, and is someone from Mayor London Breed's office present? Anyone from Mayor London Breed's office? Press
Excuse
star
me,
6.
Heckle. Mr. Heckle, are you available?
Yes, hello, this is Hank Heckle from the mayor's
Yeah.
office. I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so I think we go ahead and get started. And Anonymous, it's going to have, what, 5 minutes? So Cheryl, when you're ready.
Anonymous, are you ready
Sorry,
to speak?
Sorry, isn't there an introduction by the complaint committee, or do you want me to do before that?
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
Let me
Complaint committee
read Let me read that. On December 15, 2020, the complaint committee found jurisdiction that the records of public and referred the matter to the task force.
And Member Schmidt, did you have anything to add as the chair of the complaint committee?
First, I'll defer to my members for any comments they have. Anything from either. I think this is, I'll just say it's one of the Prop G calendar cases, and it looks a lot like other Prop G calendar cases we've seen. And I don't think it was that difficult for us to find what we needed to do in the complaint committee. I'm not sure if there were discussions apparently between the petitioner and the respondent to see if they could resolve their differences. We may hear more about that. I'm not sure. Any other comments from members of the committee on this?
Not really, other than to second that I would like to get an update from Anonymous about anything that they received or any changes that they saw after our complaints meeting.
All right, sounds good. And it looks like, is Chair Wolf back?
I don't see him.
I am. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. So
Now we can hear you. Okay.
So Chair Wolf, we moved on to file number 20033, and Anonymous is just about to begin with his opening remarks, and then I'll let you take over from there.
Okay, great.
So go ahead, Anonymous.
Please let me know when the time begins. Somebody's typing if they could mute.
Okay. You ready, sir?
I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So we'll begin on page, somebody could mute, please. We'll begin on PDF page 115, which is footer P209. I think it's Miss Leger, if you could mute, please.
No, it is.
Okay. So it's very hard for me to speak over someone typing. Okay. So on the top of that slide, the very first complaint I brought here showed that the mayor wasn't, 19047, that the mayor wasn't disclosing all of her calendars, past calendars. In 19103, I showed that the mayor wasn't disclosing her future calendars. And today's case is about whether or not the mayor is complying with all of the requirements.
Can you, hold on. Can just stop the clock. Whoever is the phone caller 6151, you need to mute, please. Victor, if you're still there, can you mute 6151, please?
I will take care of that.
Thank you. All right, can we restart the clock, please?
I'm still hearing stuff in the background.
As am I.
Yeah, waiting for, there it goes. Nope, not yet. It's not muted yet. There it goes. Okay, let's restart the clock and
Start from the beginning.
yeah, from the beginning. My apologies.
Miss Leger, please let me know when I may.
Yeah, I will. I'm just setting the clock.
No worries.
All right. Are you ready, sir?
I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So this is page 115 of the PDF, which is footer page P209. And just for some context, 2 prior complaints I brought before the SOTF were about whether or not the mayor was disclosing all of her past calendars whether or not she was disclosing all of her future calendars. And today's case, 20033, is about whether even her Prop G calendar complies with the law. So the bottom of the slide shows you one of the multiple subsections of Prop G calendar requirements. The mayor, it's not her office, it's the mayor herself, as we discussed in one of these other complaints, shall keep or cause to be kept a daily calendar that has the time and place of the meeting, and the calendar shall include a general statement of issues discussed for each of the meetings that's not publicly recorded. So if it's not a public meeting, they've got to record the issues that she discussed. So next page, and we're just going to dive right into them. And you might notice these dates are in 2019 because this complaint is very old. So this is a meeting between Mayor Breed and Superintendent Matthews, and there is absolutely no discussion in this Prop G calendar of any issues discussed. Their argument made at some point by some part of the city that as long as you put something in the subject line, that's sufficient. That's not true. The people who wrote the Sunshine Ordinance were very smart. They knew people would do that, so they said general statement of issues discussed. So something like budget, teacher union, or school renaming, if it was, say, happening in 2021, might be sufficient. And they do have to identify the mayor's office staff that attended the meeting, unless the only people at the meeting are mayor's office staff, and that's later on in 6729-5. The next one is especially egregious, meeting regarding policy. That's literally every issue you could possibly have. And even if she has many meetings regarding policy, say one meeting every week, each week she's going to discuss different issues. And Prop G is an after the fact recording requirement. So after the meeting occurs within 3 days, you have to say what happened at this meeting. And she's not saying what happened at this meeting. This is completely useless for the insight of the public. Next page. She has periodic senior staff check-ins. And each time that meeting occurs, different issues are discussed. Now, in this case, she can say mayor's office staff because they're the only people there. But that is not an issue discussed, and their argument that recurring meetings don't need any kind of information has no basis or citation to law. So each week or each month that she has this meeting, if the issues discussed are different, she needs to give a general statement of issues, plural. It's not issues. If there are 3 issues, she needs to list them. Next one, she had a meeting with the mayor of Heidelberg. We have no clue what issues she discussed with him or her. And I believe I know because I found some other public records, but it's not recorded in the calendar. Next page. So it says, here's a different senior staff check-in. Do you notice how it's on a different date? But each week that she has a senior staff check-in, we have the authority to know what she discussed. And that's because the intent of the Sunshine Ordinance is stated right at the top of the Sunshine Ordinance, which is that to prevent public officials from conducting public business in secret. And this is a woefully deficient set of entries here. We should have the list of issues discussed. They don't have to go in detail. They don't have to give me an agenda. They don't have to give me minutes because these aren't public meetings under the Brown Act. These are meetings that the public isn't allowed to see. And the only evidence we have of those meetings is the statement of issues discussed. And it is a requirement. She needs to start doing this. And I don't see any excuse for it. The chair of the complaints committee is absolutely right. This is one of dozens of such complaints. But actually, the mayor's calendar generally has even less information than the department heads. Department heads, kind of put a bunch of detail in Outlook, even if some of their events are non-compliant. But the mayor doesn't really do that, right? They're just making this calendar just for our sake. And since they're making this calendar specifically for our sake, that's why the name of the calendar is in Outlook Prop G, mayor, they should be giving the insight that the people are owed about what she's discussing at her meetings. This is a special requirement in San Francisco only, and the voters should get what they want. No kind of secret meetings should be occurring. And simply telling who she met with is not sufficient under the Sunshine Ordinance. You found this, I think, with the evidence of a single meeting against Dennis Herrera as the city attorney. The mayor has no lesser requirements. I don't have to prove intent, like they're saying, well, they didn't intend to obfuscate or hide what happened. That's not my obligation. I simply have to show that the mayor failed to record this in her calendar. And I think this is evidence that the mayor did not, in fact, record the general statement of issues discussed for meetings that are not otherwise publicly recorded. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any persons or witnesses to provide any facts or evidence on behalf of the petitioner, the complainant? Okay, Okay, hearing none, is a representative from the mayor present?
Yes, good evening, Chair Wolf, members of the task force. This is Hank Heckel from the mayor's office.
I want to time you, Hank. Hang on.
Yeah, hold on, I'm just asking if they were present.
Okay, you ready, Hank?
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Wolf, members of the task force. Hank Heckel, compliance officer in Mayor Breed's office, here to respond to this complaint. I would just like to say generally, the mayor and the mayor's office staff, we fully understand our obligations under the admin code 67.295, which is creates what's colloquially known as the Prop G calendar requirement. We fully support full implementation of those requirements in our own office and across the various city departments. It is our practice generally to fully document the meetings and provide date, time, place, attendees, and subject matter descriptions. I think this case is really about a few outlier entries. These are not representative of the calendars generally that we keep in the mayor's office, contrary to what Anonymous said. I mean, he knows that because we've produced probably hundreds of pages of calendar records to him. I know we've produced hundreds of pages of Prop G calendar entries to just various sunshine requesters over the years. He's received hundreds of meeting entries, certainly over many months. And this particular request, an issue from 2019, this goes back a ways, was for a 2-week period. So that, I don't have the exact figure, but that probably covered something like 50 entries. And so Anonymous is focused on, I guess, 5 entries in particular. And we don't really dispute his claims that, there could be some more description here and some more detail around these issues. I think these, we're not coming in to say that these are sufficient entries. I think these are just the entries that existed at the time for these particular entries that we produced. And so, there could have been an oversight for some of these. Some of these may have kind of appeared self-evident, like the meeting with Superintendent Matthews, but certainly it would be fair to list a general statement of issues there for that meeting, right? Or the meeting with the mayor of Heidelberg was really in the nature of a meet and greet, which is kind of how these, or I believe it's described as a courtesy call, and that's how these discussions with sister city officials are kind of characterized generally. But, this is not something that we're not digging our heels in. Where this is not something where we are vehemently opposed to what Anonymous is suggesting. I think we can probably reach some areas of agreement. Rather than, there was some talk with Anonymous about amending the descriptions, but as time went on, we thought it would be beneficial to kind of air this out before the whole task force and get some feedback from the task force, rather than change the calendar and then maybe have to go back and do it again. So we're open to feedback from the task force on these issues. There are some challenges for things like staff check-in calls, for example, is one of the entries. Those occur pretty much weekly, I believe, and they don't have an agenda in advance. Those are staff meetings where it's literally just sort of checking in on the issues of the day. So sometimes it can be challenging to go back and identify after the fact what specific issues may have been addressed, but I think we can make an effort to do that. And same thing for the policy meetings, to list issues retrospectively, like whatever the case may be, homelessness, housing, education, COVID. We can certainly look at doing that. So I think these, the point I want to make is I think these samples, this is a handful of entries out of hundreds and hundreds of entries. These are not representative. These are probably oversights or things that, just got missed. And we're not opposed to amending the descriptions in some cases. And it's not in the record, but I mean, if you reviewed all the hundreds of other entries that are out there from our sunshine responses, you'd see that there is more detail is provided generally. And I'm happy to address any questions the task force may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any persons or witnesses on behalf of the respondent, providing any facts or evidence on behalf of the respondent? Okay, seeing none. I see Member Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you. To the petitioner, I guess I want to ask about this idea that you're somehow cherry picking like 5 examples. Maybe, you went through hundreds and you found the very best ones. Could you give us a little bit more detail about the process by which you generated those examples that you gave to us? And, how many things, how many other items you looked at, and did you just pick out the most egregious ones? How did that work?
Certainly. So I remember correctly, this is a very long time ago. And you can look at the dates, and I believe it matches up. So what I had done at the time was I believe I'd asked for like 2 sets of 2 weeks at the time. I think the dates on these match up with that. Yes, I'd asked for 2 sets of 2 weeks. And so what I did was I looked at the meetings she had that were recurring, because that's one of the main issues I have. These policy meetings, senior staff check-in meetings, they happen all the time. And so, yes, they are one type of meeting, but that's a legal issue I have for you. That is, just because a meeting is recurring doesn't mean you can't, or you are somehow allowed to skip the rule that says general statement of issues discussed. The other issue, yes, these are in fact a few meetings with other people, but that's how she generally records meetings with other people, like a peer official. I think you can just ask Mr. Heckel, when they meet with, for example, individual supervisors, I believe the extent of the subject lines at the time when this complaint was filed is it says like meeting with supervisor so-and-so regarding District X. That tells you nothing about the issues that are discussed. I think they had suggested that meeting with Superintendent Matthews should just say meeting with Superintendent Matthews about education. And I think that's my problem here, right? Even if you were to say, okay, we're going to put what that other person does, I don't think that qualifies as a statement of issues discussed. I don't think it helps anyone, right? And so in my view, that's not cherry picked. These are the recurring meetings. This is how she generally records. And this is what I filed. And so that would be my response.
Just a little bit of clarification on that. So
yeah,
you give us, a handful, which is completely the right way to go. But I guess I'm wondering, are those the 5 worst? Like, could you find other ones that are also, this bad, or in terms of the subject matter, issues discussed,
sure,
etc.? I think these look pretty bad. But are these the only ones, or can you find 20, 30, 40, 50 more? What is the whole sample size?
Sure.
The whole bunch that you looked at. What do they look like?
Yeah, so I'll actually I can answer that very directly. The senior staff check-in. It's not that one senior staff check-in. This happens every week. So every single time you see this, you'll see it completely, in my view, meaningless. Every time she has a meeting about policy, you'll see it say meeting regarding policy. Every time she has a meeting with another peer official, it'll look like that, essentially meaningless. So there are meetings that she has that are with a specific subset group, like it'll be like a meeting about homelessness. And so those ones would be, I would say, marginally acceptable. They have like a word like homelessness or something like that. And that's why I didn't bring them up. I still don't think they are great. I think that they are just barely what is allowed. I think that in order, even something like that, where she meets with like the HSOC, you would have the issues discussed at that HSOC meeting, which are different at each HSOC meeting. But I believe they argue that because the word general is there, for example, that would be sufficient. And so that's why I didn't raise those, for example. But by the way, you can just ask. I mean, I don't think Mr. Heckel is lying to you about what other things they've produced. If he has it in this thing, we could look at it. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at that, but I'm definitely showing you. You said, are they the worst? I mean, there are many of this same level. I don't think you can get worse than this when you don't have any information. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If that answers that.
I think that's what I was looking for. You said there are many at this level. That's the kind of thing I was worried about. No more questions. Thank you.
Member LaHood.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question for Anonymous. So in addition to you've filed this complaint, in addition to seeking a violation, are you seeking corrections on all of the items in this window that you have requested, or are you seeking a violation and a promise of future compliance?
This was discussed at committee. It does not appear this task force can order them to change a public record. So my understanding of what I'm asking you to do is find them in violation, which puts them on actual notice that this behavior is inappropriate, and then review it at compliance to see whether going forward from, if you agree with me and you make that motion, they add more detail to all Prop G events going forward. That's what I'm asking you to do.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Member Forsling.
Thank you. I was just going to ask, what is, and I might have a follow-up question. Can somebody just repeat the violation that Anonymous is alleging?
It's section 6729-5 for not complete Prop G calendar.
Okay. And I guess the question that I have is, he's saying that he doesn't like the way that they note the things that they're doing in the calendar versus there's some type of withholding situation. So what I'm getting from it is kind of the former, that he just would rather than put more information in the calendars.
No, this section is specific as to what needs to be in the calendar.
Right, but I'm saying that they provided him with what was in the calendars, but he doesn't like that.
Well, he's saying that it's not compliant with the law. That's the complaint.
Right.
He's not claiming any withholding of documents. No.
Right, that's what I figured. So he just doesn't like how it's being put into the calendar.
Yeah, this is an affirmative obligation to create this calendar, and it has to be out there
a certain way. Okay.
Yeah. Do you have a follow-up question?
No.
Okay. All right. I will ask Mr. Heckel if there would be any opposition to correcting these entries.
May I respond, Chair Wolf?
Of course. I'm asking you.
Yep.
Sure.
Thank you. So no, I don't think so, honestly. I mean, I think we are open to amending these particular descriptions. We, rather than sort of go around with Anonymous and in terms of, what level of detail he might accept, we wanted to discuss this at the task force. But no, we're not. I mean, as I said, we're not dying on this hill. I mean, those entries are not the best entries. I mean, that's the point I was trying to make. They're not representative of how the calendar is generally kept. So we're open, for example, on the meeting with the superintendent of the school district and the meeting with the mayor of Heidelberg. We can try and piece together, if there are more specific issues discussed. And, the things like senior staff check-in, I mean, I need to talk to the team. Again, it's a little bit challenging because they don't have pre-existing agendas before the fact. They're just kind of, beginning of the week, what's going on in the city. And so there may be, maybe a list can be generated after the fact of, one or two high-level issues that were discussed generally.
Okay, thank you. Member Stein.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so I just had a question for Mr. Heckel. I don't know if you can answer this, but what does the mayor's office consider to be a sufficient level of detail in addressing issues discussed? And is there any guidance that exists on how to interpret issues discussed?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't think there is any definitive guidance either in the Sunshine Ordinance provision or the Good Government Guide or, or any other sources or cases or anything like that. I mean, I think it's kind of a rule of reason that a description that would be sufficient to generally describe the issues discussed. I think the intent of the law is not to be like a set of minutes that goes into great depth. I mean, we have descriptions like, meeting with the police chief about public safety, or meeting with the chair of homelessness and supportive housing regarding a hotel status update. That's one entry I'm looking at. We gave a calendar to Anonymous for November 2020 for the first couple of weeks, and I think those are fairly representative of the more detailed descriptions that we view to be acceptable, and Anonymous has those, and we think that's a better representation of what's appropriate and what we do in practice.
Okay, thank you.
Member Forsley, did you have another question?
No.
Okay. Member Schmidt, did you have another question?
Yeah, just to Mr. Heckel. So it sounds like at the mayor's office, when you get this statement of issues discussed requirement, that's not confusing anyone. It's pretty straightforward, right?
Yes, it's straightforward, but I think the level of detail is not laid out in any authoritative source. But I think there's kind of a general level of description that we think is kind of makes sense on just a common sense level, and that's why I agree that the entries that Anonymous were pointing to don't necessarily, at least a couple of them certainly don't fit that description. I mean, just saying it's a meeting with somebody, with the superintendent is not sufficient. We would need more detail around some type of policy issue like education that was discussed.
Okay, so you're not, it sounds like you're not really having a problem with it, and other people at the mayor's office, they're probably on the same page as you. They understand that they've got to, set forth a statement of issues discussed. So at this point, do you think people get it, what's got to happen here?
Yeah, I think people get it. I think we strive to do that, and I think what we're looking at are a few cases of oversight, and there may be things where specific types of entries and descriptions where we and Anonymous may disagree in the future, but I think we understand the general mandate of what to do here.
Okay, great. Appreciate it. No more questions.
Okay. Last call for questions or clarification. Okay, seeing none, let's move to rebuttals. Mr. Heckel, you have 3 minutes. You go first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to recap, I think the questions got at a lot of the relevant issues that Anonymous has raised. I'm not saying he was doing anything untoward about focusing on those entries. Certainly, those were the entries that were, most lacking from his perspective. And I think, like I said, a couple of them were just kind of inadvertently described. The mayor's calendar, I would say, is obviously she's very busy. It's a very extensive, very full calendar. Any day of the week could have, a dozen, 15, 20 meetings. And so, when you get requests for a whole month of meetings or 2 months or something, it can be a lot of work just making sure the calendar is up to snuff, and we have administrative staff that puts it together, and we have 3 days under the Prop G provision to update the calendar. So it's a little bit of a tight turnaround time requirement as well to update these. So it's possible there were some entries that went out that were lacking, but we would defend our by and large the entries that we put out there. And if there are specific things that Anonymous wants to focus on, beyond the ones he has here, we can always address that. But, and if they're, the task force has ideas, we're open to hearing them. But I think, for example, the November 2020 calendar we gave him some months ago has more description for most of the entries, and I gave you some examples before. So we think that we are in substantial compliance on this provision, and we are willing to correct some of the more marginal cases that Anonymous has pointed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Anonymous, you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Please let me know when I may begin.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. So I was originally going to file this complaint just on the basis of the senior staff check-ins. And the reason I was going to do that was because I think on the principle basis, I should be able to win on that alone. And that's because they have told you that the reason they don't do it is because they don't know beforehand what issues are discussed. And it's hard to know what issues are going to discuss beforehand. But Prop G explicitly tells you this is an after-the-fact recording requirement. And that's what they have to do. This there's no well, it takes some work, so you don't have to do it. The voters passed this law to know what every elected official and department head does with their time. And the reason I care most of all about the senior staff check-in, just as an example, is so that every week we know, 3 days after this happens, what are the issues discussed that are at the top of mind at the most powerful person in the city. And we have a right to know that. And that is what the purpose of the Sunshine Ordinance is, that we get to know what the public officials do in public business on the public's behalf, what they meet about. And then if we see, hey, the priorities of the mayor don't match mine, I can say something about it. But even if they were to correct us with just one word, education D9, I don't think that's sufficient. It's definitely not sufficient here. And so one thing I would agree with Mr. Heckel is, if you agree with me, please make a motion to find violation of 67.29-5A, and it's only against Mayor Breed, it's not against Hank Heckel or the Office of the Mayor, for failing to record a general statement of issues discussed for every meeting. And and I would suggest, maybe not in the motion, but maybe just in a suggestion, say what you think should the level of detail you think in your interpretation of the law is required. And then we would obviously, I hope, review that at compliance if you agree with me. So again, please find Mayor London Breed alone in violation of 67.29-5A for failing to record in her daily calendar a general statement of issues discussed for every meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, members. Time to deliberate and come up with an action.
Public comment.
Oh, there's no motion yet. All right, calling for a motion. Push you ahead. It's 9 o'clock.
This is Member Wong.
Go ahead.
So I'll make a motion to find violation against Mayor London Breed in the Office of the Mayor for violating 67.29-5 for failing to keep a compliant Prop G calendar.
Okay, moved by Member Wong. Is there a second?
This is Member Neighbors. I'll second.
Moved by Member Wong, second by Member Neighbors, to find a violation the mayor and the office of the mayor. The violation is 67.29-5 for not maintaining Prop G calendars in compliance with the ordinance. Is that right?
London Breed in the office of the mayor.
Yeah, that's what the maker of the motion said. Okay, Member Yankee.
May I just suggest that we include in the motion for not including a general statement of issues discussed so that it's clear the specific problem that we had with the Prop G calendar entries?
This is Member Wong. I'll accept that amendment.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Matt? I didn't hear that. For not including specific what?
I'm reading directly from the thing here. It says for not including a general statement of issues discussed.
And Member Neighbors, do you have any issues with that?
No, good addition.
Okay. Anything else, members, before we go to public comment? Okay, let's open public comment. Ms. Leger, you have the clock.
I wish to make public comment.
Do we have more than one speaker?
Yes, please.
Two, okay. Do we have another speaker?
Yeah, we have anonymous one.
Okay. Anonymous, go ahead.
My comments are fairly broad-ranging. My recollection is that many years ago, a similar issue came before the task force regarding, I think it was Mayor Lee's calendar. I don't remember more than the vaguest details of that. My vague recollection is that the task force did find Mayor Lee in violation of the Sunshine Ordinance regarding his calendar. Other question I have is, it's sort of off topic possibly, but does the Sunshine Ordinance cover sunshining the participants of the meetings to get their notes for such meetings? That's another question I'd have for the task force. And the other question I would have, I also vaguely remember, are there any exemptions for participants in these meetings other than the mayor's staff? So I think those are all my questions that this is raising in my mind. I hope I can get some insight from the members of the task force as to the, the kind of broad-ranging issues this raises in my mind. Thank you.
Second speaker, are you ready?
Yes, just let me know when to start.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and also P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. First of all, I'd like to say that we don't have a role in this, and we're not particularly familiar, but we certainly think this is an important complaint and support the motion with this caveat, and that is, I think it should say that, as Chair Wolf, I'm glad to say, pointed out, any objections to fixing past incomplete, inadequate entries. I think that's critical. Otherwise, you're encouraging, if you only say going forward, then what you're basically encouraging is city agencies can do whatever they darn well please, including violate the law in the most flagrant way until maybe on the possibility that somebody will come along and point out the violation and then have the gumption, the talent, the skill, the grit to go through all of the things that it takes to bring a successful complaint. And then, well, then they can change it. And maybe if they change it, it'll be okay. And then, and on and on. And, you know, if they violate again, then we can start another round. So I think it's a very important, when there's a violation, that the violation be fixed to the degree that it can. Obviously, if it's a meeting, the meeting presumably can't be held again, although there might be other things that could happen, but certainly documents. One of the things that I find kind of surprising and even shocking is that I'm looking at these so-called calendars, and they all have the same 6 subjects. Subject, location, start, end, recurrence, organizer. There's nothing that says subject or subjects discussed. It isn't even a blank on the form. And that, I think, is a sign of systematic or likely systematic
30 seconds.
problems. Now, Member Schmidt said something that I found interesting but also troubling, and that is how much are these examples of just a few things, or how much does it represent from the whole? Anonymous is not required to do a full-scale audit. He's not being paid for that. And I think even if it was only these, then that would be significant anyway and be a violation. Certainly, I think all of them should be fixed in accordance with the law. And that should be added to the motion. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Last call for public comment. Okay, public comment is closed. Any last thoughts, members? Are we ready for a vote? Okay, hearing none, please call the roll.
Member Wong?
Aye.
Member Wong, aye. Member Neighbors?
Aye.
Member Neighbors, aye. Member Frazier, absent. Member Padmanabhan?
Aye.
Member Padmanabhan, aye. Member Stein?
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Member Forsley?
No.
Member Forsley, no. Member Schmidt?
Aye.
Aye. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Member LaHood?
Aye.
LaHood, aye. Member Highland?
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Wolf, aye. The motion to find a violation against London Breed and the Office of the Mayor for 6729-5 for failure to keep a Prop G calendar and for not including specific general statements of issues discussed. Second by Member Neighbors.
What was the tally?
I'm missing. 9 yay, 1 no.
Thank you. Please call the next item.
Could I ask a question of Cheryl? She said a specific general
Yes.
statement of issues. Was that the motion?
Yeah, please.
Specific general?
Yeah, that was not what was stated.
Because those are opposites.
Exactly.
Did I get it wrong? Well,
Take out specific if, yeah, it wasn't my motion, so I don't want to, I just sounds like it's not how the motion was stated.
Member Wong, did I state that incorrectly?
Do you mind repeating it again?
Motion to find a violation against London Breed and the Office of the Mayor for 6729-5 for failure to keep a Prop G calendar and for not including specific or general specific statements of issues discussed. The general should be taken out.
It was Vice Chair Yankee that provided that additional.
If I may, yeah. The language specifically, Cheryl, from 6729-5A.
Failure to keep a Prop G calendar and for
Right.
not including specific.
No, not specific. A general statement of issues discussed.
Right. Okay, so you want me to take out the specific? So I'm asking Member Wong.
Yes.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
got it straight? All right, good. Let's call next item.
Item number 8, file number 20093, complaint filed by Carl Kramer against Public Works for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6721 by failing to respond to a records request in a timely and or complete manner. On April 20, 2021, the complaint committee found jurisdiction that the records of public and referred the matter to the task force for hearing with a recommendation to find violations for timeliness and withholding.
Okay, complaint committee, do you have anything you want to report on this one?
Members, anything that you want to say about it?
Maybe just that this was one of the
Speaking,
complaints,
Member Stein, thank you.
just that this is one of the complaints that implicates the mayor's fifth supplement suspending response times, required response times in the Sunshine Ordinance, and so it was kind of tricky to deal with for that reason. I mean, it takes place over a time period in which that came into effect.
Okay, it in the byline, it states that the committee is making a recommendation to find violations for timeliness and withholding.
I'll just add that Mr. Kramer's brought a series of very similar claims because he's submitting requests to various agencies to monitor their compliance with a requirement, which is relevant to the minimum wage. He is asking them for a specific document that is a compliance document, and he's not convinced that they're either complying or giving him the document that he's looking for.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's get the hearing rolling. Mr. Kramer, are you present? *6 will unmute you. Mr. Kramer, are you present? Is there a representative from the respondent?
Yes. David
State
Steinberg from Public Works.
Okay, very good. Last call from Mr. Kramer. Mr. Kramer, are you present? Oh, boy. Okay.
Just to let you know, Chair Wolf, Mr. Kramer has been present at other meetings regarding, like Member Schmidt said, very similar subjects.
Okay. All right, members, we don't have a request to move Mr. Kramer was at the committee meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he was.
So we don't have a request to hear this in absentia.
And I have not heard from the petitioner regarding his appearance one way or the other.
Mr. Chair Wolf, this
Yes.
is David Steinberg. Can I make a comment? Maybe, I don't know if it'll make a difference, but just to let you know. Mr. Kramer and I have been exchanging emails this evening because we had asked him to drop the complaint because we provided the documents that he'd asked for. And he had said he would drop it if we give him essentially the request was for the last fiscal year, and he said he would drop the complaint if we gave him the information for the new fiscal year. And basically our wires got crossed, and we thought we gave him what he the new stuff he'd asked for, and he said, no, you didn't. And so the last thing that he said to me was, I'm going to ask that the task force continue. I will ask if we can have it continue. I'm just passing that along because that was his note to me tonight. But you know, I'm perfectly happy if you want to continue. That's obviously your call. Just
Mr. Goldberg, Mr. Goldberg, did he CC that
Steinberg,
to?
yeah.
Steinberg, I'm sorry. Did he CC it to our administrator?
No, he didn't. He and I were sending each other emails a couple hours ago.
Right.
But I assumed he was.
And I have similar emails on the next one. He said the same thing to me.
Who's speaking? Oh, hold on. Who's speaking?
Cheryl Davis.
Yeah, are you able to hear me? This is Carl Kramer.
Oh, Carl, there
he
you
is.
are. Okay, we can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was on another phone and for some reason it wasn't unmuting at *6. But yeah, my request is for to continue this matter. As David Steinberg mentioned, we'd had an email exchange, and this was a complaint from an information requested a year ago, and he in our email exchange, he said he would be getting me the very similar current information. So requesting to continue this matter, and I think we can work it out.
Can I just clarify, would that be for both of your cases?
Yes, also with the
that was my
exchange with Cheryl Davis, and she assures me that she can get the information by the end of this week.
All right. So this is for both items also, the second one too? Okay, so. Okay, generally continuances are at the discretion of the chair. Since we're already here, you know, let's, if there is no additional questions or concerns about that at the request of the petitioner, I'll move to continue the item and refer it to compliance and amendments to monitor that that the documents have been received by Mr. Kramer. And at that time, the Compliance and Amendments Committee is satisfied and notifies me, will determine whether to reschedule or to close the file.
Thank you.
So that's my motion.
I'll second it.
Member Stein can have it.
Okay.
I said, this is Member Stein seconding it.
Okay, so moved by the chair, second by Member Stein. Members, any discussion? Okay, let's open to public comment. Oh, go ahead, Member Schmidt.
Just, do people have a sense that they think they've resolved this thing? Because I would want to hear some kind of, you know, they brought us here tonight. We've studied their files, and now suddenly, you know, they say they've resolved it. So I want to know, like, they've got it worked out. Do you guys get a sense that we're probably not going to be back here on these cases?
I have a feeling that that I'll be withdrawing the complaint.
Okay, that's good. I just need some kind of sense of, yeah, we think we have a tentative settlement. Good, thank you, that's all.
Okay, public comment, sure. Ms. Leger, you have the clock.
Yep, 1 moment. Do we have speakers?
Yes, please.
Anyone else? Mr. Warfield, are you ready?
Yes, please tell me when to go.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. It's Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com. Also P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117. We're not a party to the case, and we're not particularly familiar with it, except from what we have briefly heard. And what I want to say is that there is, over the years, there has been this tendency for people to focus on presumably solutions only when the Sunshine Task Force is imminently about to, or even already as tonight in, a situation where they've scheduled something. There's been all the effort of the complainant, there's been all the effort of the task force, and there's been the effort of the public to whatever degree take part in the meeting, review the materials, and so on. I think it's a very, very bad practice, and it seems to be a habit, that there comes at the last minute some kind of resolution, and then the agency gets off having a record of having had a violation. We're hearing that this was a complaint that started, well, basically a year ago. Why has it taken a year to get results that we're not even sure are adequate? As far as I'm concerned, maybe I'm, the hard liner here, but it seems to me that there would be a lot more compliance and, frankly, a lot fewer complaints if there were violations found where violations occurred, and not letting people off the hook because at the last moment they maybe satisfied the requirements of the law, which they should have done a month or maybe even a year ago. This is a repeated pattern that happens. I do think that there needs to be some kind of guidance in some kind of procedures that the task force has for this kind of resolution, and also for documenting it, because otherwise, again, you're asking for the violators to go right ahead until the very last moment. Is the complainant even alive? Is the complainant willing and ready? Does he have the energy, or she have the energy, and so on? You're asking for violations against the complainant and the public if you're not careful with how you handle these things. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to also make public comment.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Go
Can I
ahead.
start? Okay, I'd like to agree with what Mr. Warfield said. While Mr. Kramer was the one who brought the complaint, this is a violation, in theory, not just against Mr. Kramer, but against the public in general. And so, I don't think it's fair to just say that, they're going to hand over the documents to Mr. Kramer and it'll all be fine, because these documents have been hidden for however long. And so it just seems unfair that that these documents can now be given to Mr. Kramer, and then the case can be just brushed aside and everything will be okay, because it's not just Mr. Kramer that's affected. It's the public that has a right to access these documents too. And so I think, since we're all here, it makes sense to, especially since we don't even know that whether or not these documents will in fact be provided. So why bother continuing it for like another week or another month or how long to just have another meeting, see whether or not they, provide the documents. We can, you all can find a violation and the documents can still be provided. So yeah, that's my comment.
Chair Wolf, can I ask for a clarification on something?
There's another public comment, by the way.
Speaking.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I
Let's
apologize.
get through public comment first. Next speaker.
Yes, the second anonymous.
Ms. Lejay,
Yeah, I'm here.
ready with the clock?
Yeah, I'm ready. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Nobody told me to go ahead. All right. I have changed my mind on this. I know in the past I've disagreed with Mr. Warfield on the part about proceeding without, even if the complainant doesn't want to proceed. But both the last anonymous speaker and Mr. Warfield have changed my mind on that. It is a violation against the public, against the law itself, and SOTF should be able to decide that. And why not? Everyone is here. There's one caveat. The caveat is sometimes complainants, we discussed this at a committee, your hearings act as a forcing function. And I agree with the last two speakers that it shouldn't have to be that way. The law, but the problem is there's no distinction between providing a record on the 15th day and providing a record on the 150th day. And right now there's no incentive once you've gone past 10 days to still do it as fast as you can. You can do it a year later and you'll still be found with as few or as many violations as if you had done it in 15 days. So yeah, you should hold the hearing. Although I guess in the end of the day, the complainant may ask you not to find a violation. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment?
Chair Wolf, if I can ask for a clarification.
Sure. Go ahead.
David Steinberg. I know I can't. If this motion is regarding just public works, then I can't make a comment. But if I don't recall if the motion was to send both complaints to compliance, in which case I would want to make a comment against on the other item.
No, we're only do one at a time. It's on a case by case basis. You know, they're not combined.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, members, ready for a vote? Hearing no objection, please call the roll.
Hold on a second. I'm just Chair Wolf.
Yes.
Chair Wolf, aye. Member Stein.
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Member Frazier, absent. Member Padmanabhan.
Aye.
Member Padmanabhan, aye. Member Neighbors.
Aye.
Member Neighbors, aye. Member Forsley.
Aye.
Member Forsley, aye. Member Schmidt.
Aye.
Member Schmidt, aye. Member Wong.
Aye.
Member Wong, aye. Member Yankee.
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Member LaHood.
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Highland.
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Moved by Chair Wolf, second by Member Stein, to continue the item and refer it to compliance and amendments to monitor that the documents have been received by Mr. Kramer. And if compliance and amendments, if they are satisfied with the exchange, will notify the SOTF to return to the SOTF or close the file.
Very good. Thank you. Please call the next item.
Excuse me, I'm getting something in my throat. Item number 9, file number 20095, complaint filed by Carl Kramer against the Human Rights Commission for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 6721 by failing to respond to a records request in a timely and or complete manner. On April 20th, 2021, the complaint committee found excuse me, jurisdictions that the records are public and referred the matter to the task force for hearing with a recommendation to find a violation for timeliness.
Okay, Mr. Kramer, are you here?
Yes, I'm here, and I would make the same request.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody from a representative from the Human Rights Commission here?
Yes. Yes. Cheryl Davis, I'm here.
Very good, thank you. Okay, members, we have a request for continuance on the same grounds.
This is Vice Chair Yankee. I would make the same motion that Chair Wolf made for the prior one. So I don't know exactly sure if you have the language, but I would make the exact same motion to continue through and you know, compliance and amendments follow up and so forth and so on.
I would second that same motion.
Who's speaking?
Member Stein.
Okay, so it's moved by Vice Chair Yankee, second by Member Stein, and of course replace the Public Works for Human Rights Commission in the motion.
Cheryl, since you have the wording, could you read it back just so everyone is exactly sure?
I'm actually trying to put it into my notes right now.
Okay.
Moved by Member Yankee, second by Member Stein, to continue the item and refer to the Compliance and Amendments Committee to monitor that the documents have been received by Mr. Kramer and that the Compliance and Amendments Committee is satisfied. If they are, to notify the SOTF or to close the file or return for hearing.
Thank you. Okay, members, any further discussion? Okay, let's go to public comment.
I have a comment.
Ms. Leger, you have a clock.
Yeah. Do we have a first speaker? How many speakers do we have?
David Steinberg.
Okay, Mr. Steinberg.
And Peter Warfield.
Mr. Warfield. Anonymous, are you making a comment? Okay, it's just the two speakers. All right, Mr. Steinberg, David, are you ready to go first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment based on, first of all, I support the motion. Just wanted to point out a couple things. With the case of the Human Rights Commission, I can't speak to their response to Mr. Kramer, but I would like to point out that in the complaint against Public Works, there was no dispute that we have already turned over all the records that were requested as part of this that complaint by Mr. Kramer. The only issue that the committee was forwarding to the task force was a timeliness, which we were prepared to argue. Mr. Kramer has offered to withdraw both of these complaints if we give him not the requested documents from the previous request, but if we give him new documents that represent the same essential information for the following fiscal year. So the documents that he requested, at least in our case, have already been provided to him. Just wanted to make that clarification because I couldn't, because it was withdrawn. Thank you very much.
Do we have another speaker?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Warfield.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com and also P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. I'm not sure what role Mr. Kramer has played in the making of this motion. I believe that he may have indicated a willingness. to go along with it. But I would like to say that as a member of the public who is not a party to this, I'll put it a little more strongly than I did the last time. The way that this and other complaints have reached their finale, what it basically means is that information requests made about a year ago are only now being resolved. And what it means is it's a lesson for the agencies and the city government that if they just simply violate the law, I believe that's what potentially it's showing anyway, if they violate the law, it's just fine. And then when it finally comes down to the Sunshine Task Force, they can basically diddle the whole thing and throw a bunch of stuff at the people. Very often, sadly, I have to say that in this case, you're going to have presumably some committee reviewing stuff. But in other cases, people have been given stuff literally the day of the meeting, sometimes in volume, and basically been asked, did you get what you wanted? Well, how do they know whether they got what they wanted? It might take a while to figure out that they didn't. So the whole question of withdrawals and what happens with resolutions at the last minute, I think, needs to be given some attention. Because what I feel here is that I, as a member of the public, and anybody else who's a member of the public, basically is going into an agency, if we, for example, go to the HRC or any other that would cite this case, and they will basically learn they can simply ignore our requests or not treat them right for however long it takes for us
30
to
seconds.
decide there's been a violation, to decide that it's worth our time and effort, and it's an exhausting process to go forward with a complaint, and that eventually, maybe months or a year later, they'll pungle up the stuff that they're supposed to, that they should have done in the beginning. That's what this kind of action can potentially result in, a real public loss contrary to the purposes of the task force and of the open government laws. And I hope that that's clear to everybody and that that be dealt with as an issue. Thank you very much.
I'd like to comment.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So first off, I'm not sure how appropriate it was for there to be comment on public works when that issue's already been resolved, and we're now talking about this human rights complaint. I'm not sure why anybody didn't really remark on that, but that being said, I suppose I'll take the opportunity to remark on it, since I suppose in theory this could also apply to the Human Rights Commission complaint. This issue of we gave them the documents, so now this issue of timeliness doesn't matter. Well, it really does, because as Mr. Warfield correctly remarked, this issue of timeliness it's not just Mr. Kramer who's getting these documents a year late. It's other people who are getting documents a year late or not getting them at all or whatever not. And so this is a problem that affects the general public, not Mr. Kramer. And another thing, Mr. Kramer runs a nonprofit, and Cheryl Davis is very closely connected to the nonprofit world. And I'm sure that many of you know exactly what I mean by that. I will not remark any further for reasons of propriety, but I'm sure the story will come out soon enough. So I'm sure the other anonymouses here can look into that. I find it interesting that Mr. Kramer is getting these documents, and these cases are being swept away, whereas other people, he got them after a year, and other people don't. So it smells of foul play to me, and I'm wondering, is he, agreeing to shut up and play nice because he knows that's how the city runs? That, if you want to succeed in the nonprofit world, you play nice with the right people in city government.
30 seconds.
I think that's probably what's going on. So yeah, I'm really not comfortable with this, and I don't think it's at all appropriate to just say, okay, well, they're going to hand over the documents and we'll just continue the case, and then we'll say that it was all fine. So yeah, thank you.
So, I don't know, through the chair or whoever, I don't know what opportunity.
Who's speaking?
We have
Who's,
to actually.
hold on. Who's speaking?
This is Cheryl Davis.
Yeah, so the parties cannot speak in public comment.
May
Well,
anonymous member.
And I'm just asking because I know that Mr. Kramer got to speak, and then I think that's why Mr. Steinberg spoke on this last point, because a lot is said and we're not able to respond, only Mr. Kramer. So I'm just making note of that.
Well, Mr. Kramer didn't say anything. He just asked for a continuance. And we're considering that.
Yeah, I haven't spoken.
Hold on. No. I'm facilitating the meeting. People just don't get to speak. Yeah, please request it. And this is usually don't allow the parties to speak, except if there's for some specific clarification. But I will say this, that the merits of the case are not being discussed. So there's no reason to speak about them. A request for continuance is being made that maintains the file to be open and can be considered otherwise at a later date. So I'm not inclined to take anything other than just a general question of information about our procedure and what we're doing right now.
Could I ask the general?
Hold on. I will admit Ms. Davis asked first. I will hear from her first. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
No, that's all. I just wanted clarification on the process. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Mr. Kramer, do you have something else that you want to add to that?
Well, I guess, is there room for making a point of personal privilege if some remarks were slightly slanderous?
No. People have a right to speak their mind during public comment, as long as it's not disruptive or it's not offensive, as I had presented our statement regarding social and racial justice at the beginning of the meeting. And there was no call out from any of the members with regards to that. I'd like to move on. Please, one thing I will say about this is that based upon some of the comments made, is that we give people a lot of latitude to file for a continuance, even the respondents. By the same token, people have a right to withdraw their complaints, and people who make multiple and have multiple complaints with the Sunshine Task Force in the past and currently have withdrawn many of their own complaints. So what about those? The public never gets to hear those because they get withdrawn. So I feel that whatever we work on a complaint-based basis for the public to bring those complaints forward. Okay, we're not really, we're charged in such a way to look at problems of implementation, and we don't have enough staff, and we're all volunteers. So the only way that we can actually do that is by virtue of a collection and assessment of the complaints that are brought forward to us to identify problems. I think in this case, we're willing to give the benefit of the doubt to allow it to remain open in case something does come up. So the file is not going away. It's just being continued. And it's going to be continue to be monitored by us. And I think that's fair. I think it's, I don't think we're shirking our responsibility at all. Members, any last thoughts?
Chair Wolf, I don't believe public comment was closed. I asked to speak earlier.
I'm sorry, didn't hear you. Ms. Leger, will you please allow public speaker?
Yes, I will. Are you ready, sir?
I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is anonymous number 2. So I would agree with part of what the previous anonymous speaker said. The fact is, and I do this as well, and it maybe have been alluded to by Chair Wolf's comments. Complaints are a way to, they're not just a way to get the SOTF to rule on something. They're also a way to get the city to improve a procedure or policy. I definitely use complaints in that fashion. I think the difference is here, and then I'm happy to withdraw them if the city promises they, in my case, I require them to sign an agreement, but not everybody wants that. But to agree to forevermore fix a problem. But some people might just want to use it to get some additional records, as it seems this person wants to do. And I don't think necessarily that person's motivation should necessarily be suspect because they want to basically negotiate based on a complaint. I definitely do that as well. And so the problem is it's already on the agenda. And I think that's the reason why members of the public are concerned. It's not that it was in the, behind the scenes, it was dismissed. It was people did take some time. You all, the task force, took some time to think about the complaint, and it was on the agenda. And in that sense, I think maybe that's where the concern about withdrawing at this point, or I guess continue at this point, comes. It does take some more slots in some future meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Last call for public comment. Okay, public comment is closed. Are we ready for a vote?
I'm ready.
I'm asking members, are you ready for a vote? Okay, hearing no objection, please call the roll.
Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Excuse me, Member Stein?
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Member Frazier, absent. Member Padmanabhan?
Aye.
Member Padmanabhan, aye. Member Neighbors?
Aye.
Member Neighbors, aye. Member Forsley? Member Forsley?
Come back to her.
Member Schmidt?
Aye.
Member Schmidt, aye. Member Wong?
Aye.
Member Wong, aye. Member LaHood?
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Highland?
Aye.
Highland, aye. Member Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Wolf, aye. Member Forsley?
Aye.
Member Forsley, aye. Moved by Member Yankee, second by Member Stein to continue the item, refer the matter to the Compliance and Amendments Committee to monitor that the documents have been received by Mr. Kramer. I request that the Compliance and Amendments Committee, if they are satisfied, to notify the Sunshine Task Force or to close the file.
Okay, what's the tally?
10 in favor.
Okay, 10-0, thank you. And members, if you wish to pass and have your, during a vote and have your, because you may need a little more time, just say pass when your name comes up. The chair is supposed to be the last one to vote in order to break a tie, since we are an odd number that can happen. Okay, let's call the next item.
Item number 10, Administrators Report, Complaints, and Communications. And I am opening up my document. I have the schedule, also tentative, depending on what happens with COVID. They may change, as I always say, every month. Petitions, new ones that came in. I don't know the exact number, but we had quite a few. Those are all there. We did go down. Item number 3, petitions, pending petitions and complaints. In 2020, we were able to close 9 cases. And in 2021, we increased by these cases that we see up here. It was 64. So we have, as you'll see, this month's total pending complaints is 154. Last month's it was 143. 33 pending task force hearing, 121 that are, excuse me, in the blue. So that means they're waiting to be heard before committee. We had minutes from the complaint committee and public communications dated April 30th, May 14, and May 22nd. We had about 149, excuse me, emails from members of the community between May 12 and May 22nd. Anybody have any questions?
Okay, I just, I'm going to mention it in this section here. We, you know, obviously I'm not a big fan of Microsoft Teams, and we know that WebEx is being, the full platform of WebEx is going to be used by the Board of Supervisors through the clerk's office, and we will get the pleasure of that. I'm going to publicly and make a request that that be ready to go for July. Tonight was a bit untenable, and it's not getting any better. Anything else, Member Schmidt?
Yeah, I had a couple notes about number 10. First, there is some documentation about the Hooper case, and I'm noting pages 658 through 661 and 666, where Mr. Hooper and our favorite Mr. Anonymous refer to what I believe is new information that was not introduced at an earlier time about a case. And so I want to just respond to that since it's in the administrator's report. And apparently, between the two of them, they found out about a company that does or did business with a DPW, and that information would change the facts that were the basis for a recommendation coming out of the complaint committee in Hooper v. DPW. And so I wanted to acknowledge that I saw that, and that my part of that recommendation will probably change, although I want to ask about what the new information is going to be when this does come up. That's my first comment. My second comment is that I've been hoping for the opposite, but it seems like the number of pending cases is going up and up and up, and the backlog is going in the wrong direction, and I continue to be concerned. I don't want to ask, please, make me feel better or anything like that. But I feel like at some point, maybe we've really got to sit down and talk about why we're 9 months behind right now and what can we do about it. And the third and last point I want to make is very quick, that I heard something from Mr. Carnezzi's earlier about, I hope that if anyone sees anything about this, they take note about the idea that the Department of Technology is erasing people's emails 14 days after they leave their job. I'm not saying that I believe that's happening or what he means by that, but if it is something, it's probably right in the center of our jurisdiction. So let's just keep an eye out for that. That's all. Those are my comments.
Okay, just to respond to 2 things. One is, yes, very aware of the backlog, and we've been working pretty hard to try to figure out to get all the old ones out of the way so that we can work on the new ones, and possibly doing a hybrid just so we can kind of meet in the middle somewhere. I'm happy to have you at that table, complaint committee chair, since complaints start with you, and it's kind of on your plate when you say, okay, we have too much, to then spread the wealth to the other committees. Happy to have you when we have those meetings from time to time. And I usually have them when I start feeling like, my rear end's on fire. So the second thing is we have a good line of communication with Department of Technology. I also had recognized that in that hearing, and I will address that to Linda Gorell, who's the director of Department of Technology, to find out what they're doing. We know for a fact that they keep backups because we've had a kind of a precedent case that we actually ordered the backup to be reopened after a department stated they didn't have those emails anymore. And it produced significant evidence. So anyway, Vice Chair Yankee.
Yes, just a quick question for Cheryl. I don't see the complaint committee meeting minutes from May anywhere, for those who might want to look at them. They weren't in our packet, and I don't see them posted on the website. They seem to be missing. I noticed compliance amendments and EOT are posted, but complaint does not seem to have been posted.
Okay, I thought I had included them. I will look into that.
Yeah, if you find them, please attach them to next month's meeting, your report.
And we should get them online under the main part.
And get them online. Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for our administrator? Okay, let's open a public comment.
Sure.
How many speakers do we have? Hello?
I don't know. I'm one speaker. That's all I know.
Okay, Mr. Warfield.
Wait, when do I start?
Go ahead, sir.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. I'm not sure exactly what we're talking about. I know it's an agenda item administrator's report, but I'm hearing about a switchover in the way that you're going to be running meetings and the way that it seems there's a direction being sought. I'm not clear what is running the meetings now, but I have to say that I appreciate and I like very much the fact that there's essentially no instructions about, there's instruction about star 6, but there isn't what I consider to be a kind of a straitjacket that the public is subjected to when they are in a WebEx meeting by telephone. You can't see anything. You don't know what your status is as far as hands up or hands down. You don't know if you're muted or not. The only way to find out if you're muted is to press star 3, and now turns out maybe you have to put your hand down. Then if you put your hand up, you might be at the end of the line. When there's 1 or 2 or 3 commenters, that's fine, maybe. But when there are more people, certainly at the Board of Supervisors, it means basically you might have been number 1 or 2 or 3 on a 22-person line, but just to find out where you are, now you're at the back of the line. That's been particularly painful for me when I've been in a position of duplicate meeting times, overlapping meeting times, and I'm trying to be at the Sunshine meeting committee that's going on at the same time that the Board of Supervisors is meeting. We had that discussion years ago, and the main task force moved its Tuesday meetings to Wednesday when the SUPs started meeting on Tuesday. But I don't think the task force should be meeting on days that the supervisor, the main body legislatively in the city, is meeting, that there should be meetings of the task force. But in any case, the question of what kind of technology you want to go forward with, I think, should be an open discussion. And as I said, I appreciate
30 seconds.
The somewhat looser and less formal approach here, including people get to say hello, and in the straitjacket of WebEx, they may well be muted and unable to say anything. And I think it's been handy. Things have been corrected by people speaking out, even briefly. I don't think it's been chaotic. I think it's been pretty well controlled. So that also leads me to the question of next request, which I think you need to review. It's a disaster for people
The time
who are
is
trying
up.
to get clear responses.
Thank you, Speaker. Next speaker.
Agencies.
May I speak?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've brought this up before. Neither WebEx nor Microsoft Teams are particularly privacy friendly. They all, don't have great privacy policies and are probably data mining us all. And so, I don't know. It's a little bit unclear to me who is the sort of ultimate decision maker on, who gets to decide what software the SOTF uses, whether it's the SOTF or if it's the Department of Technology. But I don't know if looking into alternative video conferencing options would be a possibility, because that would be certainly appreciated. I think I guess that's pretty much everything I had to say. That as a member of the public, I don't like having a third-party company being involved in this, without, I don't like having to agree to the privacy policy of a third-party company to participate in, public meetings. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Last call for public comment. Okay, public comment is closed. Let's move to the next item.
Item number 11, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items by members of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
Members? Anything?
This is Member Stein. I'll just say, as a new member, I wouldn't mind revisiting this issue of complainants and how to handle their presence at our hearings.
Okay. Member LaHood?
Yeah, thank you. This is something that's come up recently in a couple compliance and amendment committee meetings. Could we schedule a full task force public discussion with our DCAs about attorney-client privilege, what that covers, how it can be justified, and you know, if I don't know if you think perhaps if we should ask for some research first and then have a discussion. But it keeps coming up, and there's, I think, some nuance there that I think it would be helpful for all of us to have a little more consistent guidance on that.
Okay. Let me make a suggestion on that. So we don't take up valuable regular SOTF time.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, we are working remotely. You know, I hate to ask people to make time for yet another meeting in a month. I would ask maybe to put some time aside during your meeting, since it's an issue that's coming up at your committee, and I'll put in a somewhat of a soft demand that everybody attend that meeting for this.
Okay.
For this subject. That way you know, we can continue on our way, you know, because we are severely backlogged, and so either people agree to have another meeting, and if we do have another full task force meeting, I'm going to start adding more cases to that. So this is what I'm suggesting.
Okay. I